supposed to read this chairperson guideline. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. If anyone here represents a media agency, please contact Mark N. The members of the North Central Indiana area of Narcotics Anonymous welcome you to the 3rd annual We Grow with Love convention. We'd like to thank you for joining with us in this celebration of recovery. We are deeply grateful to Narcotics Anonymous and find great joy in being able to express our gratitude here with you, our family. In Narcotics Anonymous, we are certain that when we come together to share our lives and our love with each other, a miracle happens. Our recovery takes hard work, courage, and commitment. Those are the things that carry us through as we seek the spiritual growth that comes from working the 12 steps. Never alone, we do this together and for each other, knowing that we need each other, because more than anything else, we grow with love. The preface to the basic text begins, the full fruit of a labor of love lies in the harvest, and that always comes in its right season. For us, our season has come. Would someone like to read just for today for me, please?
My name's Devin.
Hi, Evan.
Just for today, my thoughts about my recovery, living and enjoying life without the use of drugs. Just for today, I'll have faith in someone in there who believes in me and wants to help me in my recovery. Just for today, I'll have a program. I will try to follow it to the best of my ability. Just for today, through and now, I will try to get a better perspective on my life. Just for today, I'll be unafraid. My thoughts will be on my new associations. People who are not using and who have found a new way of life. As long as I follow that way, I have nothing to fear.
Thanks, Evan. I'd like to welcome Jeff from Lafayette to speak on our subject, The Joy is in the Journey today. And with that, I'll let you guys have Jeff B. from Lafayette to share on this.
Hi everybody, I'm Jeff and I'm an addict.
Hi, Jeff.
You know, one of the advantages of finding out just a couple hours before you're going to speak at something like this is you don't have a lot of time to run it around in your head and make a bunch of stuff up. And one of the disadvantages, I guess, is that you don't have some time to run it around your head and make some stuff up. You know what I mean? When Gary told me that what the topic of this was going to be, I automatically sort of was hesitant. Because I'm one of those addicts, and there may be some other ones here, who don't really identify with joy very much. It's not something that's really been in my vocabulary very much. Certainly throughout my youth and even in recovery. I'm the type of person, I guess, that, and I guess I want to talk about what's going on in my life today. In 1985, I graduated with a degree in college, and that was supposed to be a big deal. You know, everybody told me what a wonderful thing that was. And I'm the type of person that I've always looked for my joy and my self-acceptance from outside. And even though, I mean, everybody was congratulating me and stuff, it just didn't really make a difference to me. I mean, all of the achievements that I've had in my life, until just recently, have been, if anything, disheartening, because I've always imagined that if I just did something right, or if I just, you know, got the right girlfriend or got the right job, that somehow that was going to give me some self-acceptance, and it has just never worked. And for me, I associate joy in my life today with my ability at times, and they're rare still, whenever I find some self-acceptance. Because before I have that, I just am incapable of experiencing any kind of joy. As far back as I can remember, I've been the type of person, the type of addict, who, if I hear 10 positive things about myself and one negative thing, I will remember the negative thing, and that's the thing that I will obsess on. And just and really, I mean, that's the story of my recovery in many ways too. I have so many things to be grateful for when I sit down and think about it. But I'm just so much better at just blowing all that stuff off, taking it for granted, and saying, you know, I just don't feel right. Something's wrong. Instead of looking at all the good stuff. And there are times when I really don't know if that's ever going to change. I do believe that it's going to. And one of the reasons that I believe that is just recently I graduated again. I've graduated a few times from college for different stuff, and I achieved something that for me has been a lifelong dream. I got a PhD, and that's something that I really wanted to do. And I share that somewhat out of ego, but I also share that because I want everybody in here to know that if you have dreams, they can become realities in recovery. And that in and of itself is a scary thing. You know, I mean, the day I went through commencement, which was, I think, 2 Sundays ago, 2 weeks ago today, I had an overwhelming sense of joy. And my friend Jenny, who was here this week, yesterday, and this morning from Nebraska, called me on Sunday to talk to me about some other business that we were taking care of with a fellowship in Nebraska. And she called me to invite me to speak at a convention there. And I told her, you know, I'm kind of busy. My mom's here from out of town. I just went through commencement. And I got a card from her a couple days later saying that she could hear the happiness in my voice. Now, I don't know about you, but that in and of itself is such a fucking miracle for me. I know I'm not supposed to swear, but that's the way I talk, so it'll be on the tape. I don't care. It's just such an amazing miracle for me that that I can feel happy at all. And I'm here to tell you that it doesn't really happen that often, because I am so good at obsessing on the negative stuff. But for the first time in my life, 2 weeks ago on Sunday, it almost sort of cracks me, makes me break up to think of it, because it's just a gift that I have never had in my life. Striving, trying to find some self-acceptance from outside, and I had this accomplishment, and I really, for the first time in my life, felt like I really did something. I should really be proud of myself. And you know what? I don't believe today that that's a result of getting a bigger and better degree. I don't believe that for a minute, because it didn't matter in the past what the achievement was or how magnificent it was by anybody's standards, let alone, you know, a recovering addict. It didn't matter what the achievement was. It was never enough to make me feel okay. I ascribe that at least glimpse of an ability to find some happiness in what I'm able to do and in the gifts of my recovery to the fact that I've come here and I've worked steps. And I've done not always the best that I could do, but the best that I can do on any given day. And it still really doesn't make a lot. You know, I'm the type of addict. I want to try to figure everything out and make sense of everything, and try to figure out why this works. And you know, I mean, there's some words written on a page, and they got numbers. You know, 1 through 12 numbers before them, and people say, you know, you read these and write about them and try to incorporate these ideas in your life as best you can, and your life will change. To me, that's still unbelievable. And yet, I have to tell you today that I am not the same person that I was when I walked in here 8 years ago. I don't know why this works. And it doesn't matter that I don't know why. There's no question in my mind that if I continue to do the next right thing, my ability to feel joy in my life will only increase. But I have to say again that, you know, it's really been a struggle, man. It's really been hard. And I know that my experience coming to conventions, and I hear people get up, and I know, you know, I feel the weight of the responsibility to get up here and bring this really positive message of recovery to everybody. And in the past, when I've been in this situation, I've had a tendency to maybe exaggerate a little bit and not talk about the struggles. And when people do that, when I'm sitting out there, I leave the workshop thinking like, man, that guy's doing everything right, and I'm all fucked up. And I'm here to tell you that that's not the way it is for me. You know, that for every glimpse of joy I get in my life, there's 10 times whenever I'm not even able to get a glimpse of it because I'm so tied up in all my negative crap. And that's the way my recovery has been. I guess the thing that I'm dealing with today, and it's the most overwhelming thing of all for me, is low self-esteem. And I mean, when I say those words, it doesn't really come out with the kind of impact that it really needs to, because we talk about low self-esteem and no self-esteem and all that kind of stuff. But my reality is that, well, maybe I can put it in a different context for you. I just did a fifth step a couple of months ago with my sponsor. And after the fifth step, we were talking about step 6, and he said, what is the exact nature of your wrongs? And I said, well, that's my character, because I want to have the right answer. I want to like impress my sponsor and have the right answer, man. So, that's my character defects, and I went into this whole thing about how I was taught that character defect is the motivation for something, and a shortcoming is the manifestation, because that's the way I was brought up. In other words, like character defect is lust, that's the motivation, and the shortcoming is driving around the block 3 times to see that same young girl in that same short skirt. That's a shortcoming. That's what I was taught, and I got into this whole big trip about, the difference between shortcomings and stuff, and he just looked at me and said straight out, no. That's not the nature of your wrongs. Oh, now I'm in trouble because I don't know what he's talking about. I hate that when my sponsor says stuff to me, and I really want to know. I really want to know what he's talking. I want to know the answer, and I don't know. So I got to sit there quietly and say, okay, what is the exact nature of my wrongs? And he said something to me that has still, it's been messing with my head for the last 2 months. He said, man, the exact nature of your wrongs is your core beliefs about yourself. He said the thing that you were going to have to come to terms with before you're going to be able to move on in your recovery is the fact that every single thing you've done in your life has been based on a false philosophical system in which you are no good. And you will never be able to do anything right, and you'll never be able to do enough. That's the exact nature of your wrongs. Because you know what, man? And I know there's people in here who can relate to me. All the memories that I can remember that really had an impact on me from childhood up are negative. I know I got positive reinforcement whenever I was a child. I know that my grandparents and my mom were not evil demons trying to make my life miserable, but I got to tell you that I remember the negative stuff, man. I remember my mom saying something to me like out of the blue, like just an offhand comment. I said something, and she said, "You talk like a man with a paper asshole," and that made me feel about this fucking big. And those are the sort of influential moments that I remember from my childhood. Those are the times that really had an impact on me, and I bought into it, man. I can remember my grandmother. My grandmother used to have to watch my sister and me whenever my mother would be working, and I can remember her saying things to me like, because I was born, I didn't have a legitimate father, and so I was illegitimate, whatever that means. I was an illegitimate person, and I bought into that illegitimacy. I bought into it. I said, that's what I am. And my grandmother saying, you were a mistake. Things would have really been better off if you had never been born. Everybody would be better off if you weren't here. And I believed it. I mean, what was I supposed to do? I was, 5, 6, 7 years old. Grown-ups know. Grown-ups know about the world. It must be true. And I have spent the last 36 years of my life living up to that, man. And I'm not just talking about when I'm using. I'm talking about every single day of my recovery. Placing the limitations on my higher power, because placing my limitations on my higher power, I could never do that. That could never happen for me. And it really comes down to me really on the deepest of levels that I've been able to identify so far in the course of my step work, feeling at the base of my existence that I really don't deserve to be here. That I really am no good. That I don't deserve to have good things happen to me. And if they happen to me, it's not going to last. No way. Because it never has. Well, of course it never has. The thing that I have to come to terms with in my life is that everything that I have in my life today is what I gave to myself. You know, and if I want to sit around and talk about how I'm not satisfied with this part of my life, or I'm not satisfied with that part of my life, or there's no joy in my life, you know what? It's because I didn't give it to myself. It's my responsibility. And if things aren't going well in my life, it's because I've given myself what I really honestly feel that I deserve. And I believe that with my heart and soul. I am not a victim of circumstance today. And you know what? I never really was. I mean, as that child hearing that message, I didn't know any better. And maybe I was a victim in that respect. Maybe I was a victim of emotional child abuse. Probably was. Somewhere along the line, though, you know, and it says it real clearly in all the literature that I read, that we have to be willing to take responsibility for that stuff. Which is fine, you know, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with saying, okay, you know, it happened to me. I'm still angry about it. I still have resentments about it, and I don't know whether I'll ever be able to get to let those go entirely. But the thing that really gets me, looking at this 6th step and at this 7th step, and looking at the exact nature of my wrongs, which is this belief system about myself and my life that I've used since I can remember, that my sponsor tells me is incorrect. My sponsor tells me that my belief system needs to be revised. And it needs to look like something like I am worthy. I am a good person. I do deserve to be here. I do deserve to have good things happen to me. Which all sounds good on paper, man, but where do you start? This is the question that I ask myself. Because this stuff is so deep and so old and so hurtful and so real to me that it's second nature. I don't second guess my negative attitude about myself. I have to constantly try to revise those tapes at every instance. And the fact of the matter is, the conclusion that I've come to is that there's a reason why we're supposed to be talking to God in step 7. Because it's too overwhelming for me, man. I can't do it. I have really tried to change my beliefs about myself on my own. And I've really tried to, you know, adapt my behavior to be a more positive person, and I listen to positive motivation tapes, and I read my basic text and my It Works and my daily meditation book every day. And I'm not saying that those things are bad. I need to do those things. But I'm just, once again, in step 7, getting real in touch with the fact that on my own, I don't know how to change. I don't know where to start. And you know, I think we've all had those moments of complete and utter desperation when we got down on our knees or did whatever we did to, sort of supplicate ourselves to our higher power and say, anything that you want from me has got to be better than what I'm giving myself. Anything that you have for me has got to be better than what I have for myself, because you know what, man, I'm doing a lousy job here, and I want to hold on to it because at least it's my lousy job. At least I have some illusion of control. And that's the scariest thing for me, is giving that up. Is saying that I'm not in control, I never was. And for me, my recovery has been a series of cliffs. It's the best analogy that I know to use, because sooner or later I come to the place in my recovery where I am filled with pain and I'm filled with hopelessness. And I'm not feeling much joy. And the choice becomes very clear. I'm on the cliff. My choices are to go back and live in that shit for a little while longer, or a long while longer, or to jump. And for me, I've got to make that journey up to the edge of that cliff a lot of times and suffer the same pain over and over again until I reach that point of desperation before I'm ready to say, you know what, anything that you have for me has got to be better than this. And at that moment, I jump. And you know what? It always works. It always carries me to a place that was unimaginable to me. It carries me toward joy. I still haven't figured out the trick of trying to find joy in that journey. But after having jumped off a series of cliffs in my recovery, I can say that I trust the process a hell of a lot more now than I did the first time I had to jump. That I know that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. And I got to tell you that of all the things that have happened to me in my recovery, so many wonderful things, I've met so many wonderful people, I have learned how to begin to develop intimate relationships, mostly with men, because the women's I still have trouble with that for various reasons. But you know, I'm learning how to do all this stuff. But of all the things that I'm learning and have learned and have experienced in my recovery, the one single thing that keeps me coming back is the knowledge that it's going to be okay. There is no way in the world you can buy that. It ain't for sale anywhere. If it is, let me know, man, because I'd really like to avoid some of this pain. But it's, as far as I know, it's not for sale. That the experience of going through that pain and getting to the point of surrender and what I call jumping off the cliff, only to be upheld and uplifted by my higher power and carried to a new and better place. The only way to get that knowledge in my gut that things are going to be okay is to go through that process. Is it joyful? Not for me, not while it's going on. I hate it, man. I absolutely hate it. But I can't tell you, I do a lot of service in NA, and I spend a large portion of my life doing NA service, because I can never pay back what I've been given in here. And again, I don't mean to say that my life is wonderful and everything's happy and joyous and free, because, you know, it just isn't. And I'm real quite frankly, I'm cynical enough to be real suspicious of people up here and say that my life is happy and joyous and free and everything's wonderful and beautiful. You know, I mean, my life just hasn't been that way, but maybe yours is, and if it is, man, I'm really happy for you. But that hasn't been my experience. My recovery has been a struggle. And continues to be hard, difficult, a struggle. But it's like, you know, there's two kinds. I've experienced two kinds of pain in my life, at least two kinds. One is the pain of using, which is the pain of desperation and hopelessness, knowing that there is no way out. And I've experienced the pain of recovery, which is sometimes redundant and sometimes unnecessary, whenever I live in that second step so long that I'm ready to blow my brains out because I just can't see a way through, man. Because I want to find a way through. I don't want to have to jump off the cliff. I want to think a way through. That's a better way to put it. I don't want to feel my way through. I want to think a way through. And, you know, all I'm really trying to do is go over, under, around the real deal, which whatever it happens to be at that given moment, instead of just realizing sometime, you know, maybe eventually I'll realize that it really is easier just to go through. Is there joy in my life today? Sometimes. Is there joy in the journey? Only when I get to the point of surrender. And you know, surrender for me is the easiest thing in recovery. It's just like, ugh. That's all it is. But for this addict, getting to the point of loosening my butt up and letting go takes a lot of pain. I really love to hold on. I love to fight. I love to live in the illusion of control. And quite frankly, given all the things that I've already talked about my image, about myself, and the way I feel about myself deep down, I love the pain. You know? That's the only conclusion that I can come to because I give it to myself so damn frequently. I love the pain because you know what? A lot of my recovery has been spent in a penance frame of mind. If anybody can relate to that. It's like, you know, I am such a horrible person and I've done such horrible things and hurt such wonderful people that I have to pay. I have to do penance. And you know, the question that's confronting me on a daily basis today is how much is enough, man? How much is enough? How much more do I have to pay for some undefinable sin that I don't even know what it is? How much longer am I going to put myself through this misery and deny myself the joy that I hear other people talking about? Well, it takes what it takes. But those are the things going on in my life today, and those are the things that are real to me today, and those are the things that I'm struggling with. I don't know whether this is very enlightening for anybody about the joys in the journey, but it's where I'm at today, and the most important thing for me to do is to get up here and tell you where I'm at, and that there has been joy in my journey. There's been a lot more pain than joy, and that has a lot to do with how I feel about myself. Thanks for listening.
Now we'd like to have Skip share, if you would.
I'm an addict. My name is Skip.
Please, Skip.
I'm gratefully recovering to the grace of God. Then they program many people. I don't know. I got here and I looked at the topic and I said, man, the joy is in the journey. And there's been a lot of joy in my recovery. And they told me this would be a journey too, and that throughout that journey that sometimes I would have to stop, and smell the roses, that the recovery wasn't the end of the road. Recovery was life. I was starting to live life, and today that's what I do. It's not doom and gloom for me. I have fun in recovery. And when I got here, you couldn't tell me that. I thought I said, man, those people are squares. They don't even have fun. What do they know about joy? I always bought joy in a bottle or in a bag or something. That was my joy. And I came to recovery and I took time out to smell the roses. And I had to learn that. People had to show me. I was grateful that in this journey, I had guides. I had people that were here before me and showed me the way. Because left up to my own devices, I feel like this, that the life is a series, man. I'm on this journey and it's a series of forks in the road. I come to those forks in the road all the time, and I come to this fork in the road and I see that road, man, like we got here, it's grassy, the sun is shining, man, the birds are singing, and it's so peaceful, and I've been down that road before, and it's a nice road, It gets me where I gotta go, Then on the other hand, I see this other road, and it's dark, and it's rocky, and it's uphill, and something draws me to that other road, knowing that I can take this grassy road and get where I gotta go, But I want to get there faster, thinking that I'm going to go through this dark, rocky road. I'm going uphill, right? And, something draws me to that side all the time. And I'm grateful that there are people that show me, hey, man, Skip, you ain't got, it's like me knocking my head against that that wall before somebody tells you, Skip, there's a door, man. Quit knocking your head. You ain't gonna knock that wall down, you know. Use the door, you know. See, but I have to be shown this, you know. If you tell me, you can tell me all day, you know, but if I see somebody there walking through that door, I say, well, maybe I'll try that, you know. And that's what life is about for me. I come up against those all the time, you know, especially in my recovery, you know, because, you know, using wasn't always doom and gloom either. You know, I can remember good times, you know. It's just that at the end, the bad times start to outweigh the good times, you know, and that's when I came to that end of the road. It talks about in our basic text. And then, and coming to this convention the first time, you know, the road home, you know, and today that's where I'm at. You know, I'm home, you know, and it took what it took for me to get here, you know. The joy that I find in the journey also is when I see new people coming to this program, you know, struggling. You know, they get caught up in the revolving door. You know, and it's so easy to get caught in that revolving door. You know, you use once and you get comfortable with it. You know, oh, I got away with it. You know, and I'm okay, I'm still here. Didn't get no worse. You know, I didn't lose everything. Come back in the rooms while I relapse. You know, and everybody runs up to you, oh, poor baby. You know, boom again. You know, and this time it got a little worse. You know, and they caught in this revolving door, and I see them struggling. But then I see them come to that one meeting, man, and you could see that expression, that desperation the other addict was talking about, and they start to grasp this program. You know what I mean? And that's beautiful. You know, that's one of the beauties and the joys of this program, man, is to see people that struggle, you know, and then see them come into the rooms and start grasping recovery. I mean, that my heart just blows up when I see that, you know, and I love it. You know, that's what I love about this program, you know, that anybody can get it, you know. Seeing people grow in this program, you know, there's a guy in my area, and he spoke, he gave he shared for the first time, and I can remember him when he first came in, and he was confused, you know, like I was, and a lot of people that come to these rooms, you know, and I could see that self-confidence, you know, because, you know, I'm one of these people where, you know, I like to levitate people to a certain extent. You know, I feel like people are like telephone poles, you know what I mean, and we have a higher wire and a lower wire, you know, and I like to stay positive, and I like to stay around positive people, you know, and it talks about, you know, addicts tell me, you know, that association brings on assimilation. You know, if I sleep with dogs, I wake up with fleas, you know. So if I surround myself with people that are on this lower level, you know, that's the way I'm going to stay. You know, and when I first came to these rooms, that's where I was at. But I seen these positive people, they're happy and they're laughing, you know, and their life is not always great, you know, but they seemed happy, you know, and that's what I wanted to be, you know. So I would go hang with them. Let's go out, okay, let's go out for coffee, you know, and stay around positive people. And this person was real negative and confused and was always beating himself up, man. I told him, man, you know, put the hammer down, dude. You ain't got to beat yourself. Give me the hammer. I'd walk up to him, give me the hammer, man. Come on. I know you got it somewhere. You're beating yourself up again. You know, why? You know, and we always like to say, well, you know, people beat me up like you treat me like I treat me, you know, I'd kill them, you know, because we're the best, you know. We'd rather be in those known hells than those unknown heavens, you know. The fear of wondering how we're going to turn out. Because, see, I'm one of these people that I read this book like this, from back to the front. Because I want to know what's going to happen before it happens, you know. And the fear of not knowing keeps me from opening it up, you know, unless I have it this way. You know, and there was a lot of fear that talks about my basic text. If I would have put some kind of expectations on my recovery when I first came in and wrote a list of how I would ultimately want it to be, I would have achieved myself. You know, because I've achieved great things in this program, and I've touched a lot of lives, and people have touched my life. You know, it's taken me, recovery has taken me from Baltimore. I drove to Baltimore last year down US 30. It was one of the most wonderful experiences I ever had. You know, I've been to Iowa. You know, I never thought I'd be, in my wildest dreams, be in Iowa and Davenport, Iowa. There I was, you know what I mean, in Davenport, Iowa, you know. And a lot of it was just on a whim, you know, hey, there's a convention, let's go. You know, and recovery has taken me a lot of places, and I've met a lot of people, you know, and it's wonderful to come to, go somewhere, be accepted for who you are, get a hug, and then somewhere down the line you see that person again, you say, damn, I remember you, man. That's joy. You know, I remember that night, you know, that we talked briefly, you know, but we talked, we touched, you know, and I feel that's the way recovery is for me, you know. There's nothing in here original. There's nothing in here that hasn't been done or said before, you know, and somewhere down the line, I'm going to hear my story, you know. They told me that when I came here, I was going to meet a stranger, you know, and that stranger was going to be me, you know, and I'm starting to find out who I am through you people. And me, I've heard my story at these tables, you know, and I'm grateful for that, you know, that I've seen people, and then, you know, one of the joys for me is when I go somewhere and I hear somebody get honest, you know, that gut level honesty, talking about where they live down here, you know, because I can give this face stuff and all this and give you this, and, you know, I'm talking about where you live down here, you know, and get butt naked honest, you know, and I say, damn, how can they do that, you know? Some of those things I'd never say, you know, and damned if I don't find myself sitting somewhere and I'm sharing some of those same things, you know, and that's a beauty, because I was shown that, you know, if that person wouldn't have got honest on that day, maybe I wouldn't have got honest on that particular day. But I heard that person get honest with issues in their life and deal with them. They didn't use, you know, they seemed reasonably happy, you know, and that was the beauty of it, you know. And they got rid of the garbage, you know, because once I put my shit on the table, it's yours to do what you want with it, you know. Things for me are either blessings or they're lessons, you know, and that's how simple I put it, you know. So the journey, it has been great, you know, and it has been tough, you know. I've been through a lot in my recovery, you know. I faced a lot of challenges, you know, and through the grace of my higher power, I haven't used the bottom. You know, there's been deaths. You know, my grandmother died. She was dear to my heart. My grandmother died this year. And I went to a funeral. You know, and if you know, you come near a nave step and you go to a funeral, you know, you remember all these other people that you have forgot about, you know what I mean, on this list. You know, and I'm saying, oh God, you know, and these are people that are in my family, you know, that I had to find, you know, some forgiveness for, you know, and I had to find, you know, some empathy to understand, and you know, one of my uncles, I thought I could never do that, you know, and I had a real spiritual experience, and I've had a few in this program where, you know, before the wake, before the burial, the day before, the same day as the burial, they had my grandmother out, and I went early, you know, by myself. Me and my girlfriend, we went early, and nobody was there yet. And this particular uncle, he's out there using, and they couldn't find him, you know. And my grandmother raised him, you know, and to his adulthood or whatever, you know what I mean, as a child to adulthood, and he got a large sum of money. My grandmother was sitting in the old folks' home, and I was so pissed off. I said, man, you know, he can do more for her, you know, and at least get her in a better place. And I had a lot of resentment, a lot of anger towards him, and I didn't hide it, you know. And I got into recovery, and well, anyways, they couldn't find him, and his disease is really progressing fast. And when they found him, he was fucked up, and they didn't tell him, you know, because he was so blazed. And at that point, that morning, they hadn't found him yet, and I'm standing in front of the casket, and I start talking to my grandmother, and I know I had, you know, this program has given me enough awareness where I have to look at my shit too, you know, and And, you know, I was telling her, I said, you know, Grandma, I wish I could do more for you. You know, I could have done more for you when you were alive, you know, because I could have, you know. But I like to say it was him because he had all the money, you know, and I was just as bad. I played a big part in that. And, you know, I heard my grandmother speak to me, you know, and she told me to forgive him, that he was my family. He was my blood family, you know, and I prayed to God that he would make it there and see her, you know, before she was buried. And it was real spiritual. I cried, and about 20 minutes later, he walks through the door, you know, and I had to tell him, you know, I'll be here for you, you know, whenever you need me, you know. But it took a lot, and there's been a lot of experiences. You know, I heard this word, and coming here, you know, I've heard a lot of grown-up words, responsibility, you know, and, you know, all these grown-up words that were like Greek to me when I first came here, you know, I knew nothing about. You know, I like to call them $10 words, and there's this word, and it's called serendipity. You know, and it was broke down to me in layman's terms. It's where the grace of God and opportunity come together at the same time. You know, and if I'm fucked up, I'll never see it. You know, but being clean and having some awareness, people had showed me, you know, that I can become aware of this happening, and it's happened in my life a few times. You know, with the grace of God, an unmerited gift, something that I don't deserve, that my higher power has given me. You know, a gift. You know, and today I'm tired of spitting him in the face because I've done it so much. I cursed him when I was out there. You know, and today I can accept that gift, man, and I can give it away. You know, and today I see it when it happens. You know, and that's happened to me a few times in my recovery. You know, opportunity has come, and the grace of God at the same time, and I'm there. You know, I'm looking for it today. You know, recovery is great because even in the worst of times that I've had in my recovery, and I've had some bad ones, man, I remember, you know, being engaged one night and the next night not being engaged, losing my job, falling in the bathtub, breaking the ribs, sitting in the hospital, and saying, man, it can't get no worse than this, you know? And praying, God, please, why? What did I do? I'm in recovery, man. I'm working steps. I got a program. Why is this happening to me, you know? And it's because I'm human, man. And then, I was blaming God. I said, God, why you do this to me, man? I thought we was jelly jam tight, man. What's wrong, you know? And it's like, Skip, you know, I didn't do this, man. You did. Your self-will got you into those situations. When are you going to give me the steering wheel, you know, jump in the trunk, and let me drive? You know? And sometimes that's what I got to do. I just got to get out of the way and let God do it. You know, sometimes the best thing for me to do is nothing at all. You know? I got to remember, my best thoughts and ideas got me here. So all of a sudden, I'm Einstein because I got a few, you know, AMs and PMs in this program? No way. You know, today I know that there's something for me, you know, in life. You know, and sometimes I don't understand what it is, why I'm at a certain place at a certain time. You know, but sometimes it's not for me to understand. It's not for me to sit here and figure out my life. You know, because I'll be so confused. You know, I might go out there and use about that shit. You know, it's not for me to figure out. It's for me to live it. Whatever comes my way, you know, it's for me to deal with it. Because that's what normal people do. You know? Not that I want to be normal, you know. But that's what people do. That's what human beings do. They live their life. Problems come. They deal with them. They go on. You know? And this program has given me that opportunity to be able to deal with my problem and to go on with my life. You know, and for that I'm grateful. You know, because before, you know, I shared this before, I was a professional escape artist. You know, And anything that didn't go my way, I ran from. And today I don't. You know, today, whatever comes down the pipe, I know I ain't got to use about it, number one. You know, I know I have to get into the solution, number two. And 9 times out of 10, when I come to a meeting, I find a solution. Because somebody's been through it before. And they didn't use it. You know. So this journey, you know, it's a never-ending thing. It never ends. You know, for me. And I know I have a long road to go, but I know that somebody's going to be there when I get there. You know, and somebody's behind me, you know, in this journey. You know, and I try to touch as many people's lives as I can while I go through that journey. You know, and if you're embarking on this journey and you're starting to feel lonely, you know, sometimes that road gets real lonely, you know, that you feel like you're the only one on that path, man. You know, whatever you believe in is with you. You know, whatever you believe in. You know, and it's going to guide you. You know, today I go with my heart and not my head. This always got me in trouble. You know, this is an illusion. This is where my disease lives, right in between these ears. You know, this is where my heart is where my spirit lies.
Well, my name's Gary, I'm an addict. Normally I don't do this. I think that this topic was so important for me to understand just what recovery is truly about. Part of the time I just have to remind myself that this is all extra. I mean, the place that I came from and the places that my addiction took me, it's almost like I have a feeling like I have no right to what I have now. I mean, every time I start to feel sorry for myself, I just remember where I came from and how bad my life really was and how horrible that addiction really is. And it was what has happened to me since I came to NA and how my life has changed has been remarkable and incredible beyond description. Briefly, being cynical. The places where I went because of my addiction, I saw horrible things happen. In my lifetime, I've seen so many people commit suicide that were addicts. Not all of them were successful, for instance. All of the people I began using with when I was a real young person are dead. And that's been a lot of them. And towards the end of my using days, I was horribly cynical. I mean, to me, the world was a real bad place where bad things happened frequently and always to me. And to be able just to cope with that and to be able to live with that view of the world, I was so closed up and so bitter and cynical that I would really cease to almost exist as a human. But coming here and starting to work on that second step, my life just changed. The first step was a no-brainer for me. I mean, the surrender thing, I'm not saying it's that easy, but to admit that I was powerless, my life was unmanageable was really fairly simple. But because I had this lack of any kind of a belief system, the second step was an ongoing and long-term thing for me. I literally had to create some kind of a reality where the world wasn't like that. And my first glimpse of it was walking into an NA meeting. And the nature of me was to always disqualify myself from any kind of recovery. When I came and stayed this time, it had been my, 20 20th time of going to different kinds of treatment places. That's just a guess, but lots of them. And I'd always disqualified myself, but this last time I went into an NA meeting, and for some miracle there was people I know that were there and that I had used with, and I could see that these people were in the same position I was in when I had left them several years before that, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I finally got to the point where I was able to say, okay, what do I do next? And that was a huge thing for me. And the second step for me was a long and evolved process of just developing a belief system, of something to believe in. And like the rest of us, what happened to me, I've come further than I ever would have imagined. You know, I was in the last time I was using, I did my withdrawals in prison. And I went in and I went through all those horrible withdrawals, and then towards the end of my term I started my first college class. So I started going back there. I came out and I went all the way through it and stayed in school, and I graduated. That was a dream I'd given up when I was real young. Becoming involved with the people here and what I've gotten from this. And now I have career goals and plans, and I know what I think is important in life. And it's been more than I'd ever anticipated. And my reality is that it's because of the people that I found here. I mean, as I said, when I went to that first NA meeting, I didn't care anything about the 12 steps. I didn't care anything about a tradition. I didn't care anything about a program. I didn't care anything about God. When I got there, I found some people who cared. And that's what I grabbed onto. And what keeps me here even more than the program we use is the people that are here. And one addict helping another. And what we do and how we do it, and just being there for each other, and knowing that whatever I'm going to be going through, that I've got help and there's people who care about me. And that kind of thing has been so hard to accept. Because like I said, I was always just wanted to disqualify myself. I just never wanted to really be feeling that I was worthy of that. There were people that I could let into my life, and I could allow them to change me. That I was able to say, maybe somebody else knew what was good for me. But I found it here, and it is from the influence of the people that I found here and the program that I've changed. And it's just really great now. I mean, it's like the last sentence in the first step in the basic text is not where you've been that's important, it's where you're going. And now it's kind of like, instead of defining myself by my past and all the things that I'd been through, that's the picture I had of myself. It was my past history. That the accumulation of my past was who I was. Right? Well, now it's not like that anymore. I mean, you know, now I define myself by what I believe in, by the spiritual principles of NA, by my hopes and my dreams and what I hope to accomplish yet, and what I think is really important, and what we mean to each other, and how we change each other's lives. And that going from the place I was to this kind of understanding of what it is to be me and what it is to be human is just incredible. I mean, it doesn't take much for me to recall what life used to be. I can call it up like that. And when I get really down and depressed, I can remember what my life was like, and it's just, this is extra, and this is great. What we do here is truly incredible, and it's a gift. It's just kind of, it's beyond description. I lose words trying to even describe what has happened to me. So anyway, I'm done. So we can. Yeah.
Anybody else like to share? anybody else like to share, would you like to help me close this workshop then?
How do you get that? Let's see if I can hit this.